I'm Guy Powell, and welcome to the next episode of the Backstory on Marketing and AI. And if you haven't already done so, please visit prorelevant.com and sign up for all of these episodes and podcasts. I am the author of the upcoming book, The AI Marketing Machine, and you can find out more information about that at marketingmachine.prorelevant.com. Today I'm interviewing Jonathan Hayes, and he's with Ammunition. And so let me tell you a little bit about Jonathan. He is the executive video director at Ammunition, which is an Atlanta-based full-service advertising agency. He joined Ammunition in 2023 when his Emmy-winning company Mad Hat Productions was acquired. A certified expert in generative AI for advertising, he's passionate about keeping Ammunition at the forefront of AI innovation in the industry. It's fantastic and Emmy award winning. That's pretty good. So welcome, Jonathan. So good to have you.
Thanks, Guy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So tell us your backstory. How did you get involved in AI and marketing?
Yeah, that's so ultimately I think like so many people when ChatGPT was formally released to the public, I just immediately gravitated towards it. It may be within like 4 or 5 months, something like that. And when I started interacting with it, I was like, this is such a powerful tool. And that really on one hand, it like everybody, I started using ChatGPT like Google, like asking it questions and seeing what it could do. But I quickly kind of got more interested in the predictive modeling. So, for example, anything text-based, and now, of course, we already see all the image generation, video generation, and the generative models really blossoming right now in a lot of ways. But for me, the large language models were such an easy connection to be able to implement AI into our processes, and from the predictive side, specifically with, for example, if I were to go and do a shoot and I'm interviewing a bunch of different people, like we do that quite a bit where it's a testimonial format from all different types of videos. And so we can take those transcripts and put them into a local model and where we can completely crunch them and use them just simply as a resource to be able to find bites. And I don't have to say, hey, I want someone who is talking specifically about this topic. I can say something like, hey, I'm looking for something that's emotionally interesting, or I'm looking for something that could be, profound, or, I can just express the sentiment and it can be able to calculate that. So that's just like one example. Of course, when it comes to creative ideation, I'm a big proponent of transcriptions. Just even in our work, like I said, for interviews, but also if we have a meeting. I think most people, when they look at transcriptions, it's like, oh, that's a really great way for us to get meeting notes. So we can all remember what was talked about. But if you have for example, a creative brainstorm session and sometimes those can be long, a couple of hours long, where people are talking about all different types of ideas. And that's really where, that's the human input, where you're getting not AI asking AI to come up with an idea. It's like we're centered around our creative process. And then we can take those transcripts into, if there was a healthy 10-minute conversation on an idea that we really liked, we can take those transcripts and immediately start going into script development, treatment development, really you name it. And so for, a copywriter coming out of that meeting, traditionally is like, hey, we have all these ideas, now start writing a script from scratch. Now we're in this world where it's like, hey, go ahead and give me a treatment of this or an initial script of this idea. And then the copywriters got, at least maybe 50% of the work done because it was based off of really good human input. And then can immediately kind of continue that entire process of editing, exploring different ideas. And just for me, it's just been a game changer.
Yeah, same here. And I like your idea of the using the transcripts, because so many times when you get started on something and, you kind of have 3 or 4 smart people and energetic people and idea and creative people doing something. And then, in the past, for me anyway, a couple days later, I'd say, now, what did Jonathan say back then that was really good? And now when you have the transcripts, you can look it up and find it within a few seconds and then generate new ideas off of that. It's really just, it's amazing what AI can do for us now.
I completely agree. And if I were just to emphasize one thing about that is that right now, so many people, when they talk about AI, it's that you talk about there always needs to be a human touch point. right? And so many people emphasize that on the back end, which is obviously so important. You don't want to be producing any kind of AI content without touching something on the back end. But any kind of recording, whether it's a meeting, whether it's your own recording for an idea, or just even how you want to, formally respond to an email, so to speak, if it was like a lengthy email, to be able to put human input on the front end really resolves and takes away so much of the power of AI that it tries to do and ultimately fails at. The hallucinations. If you were to say like, "Hey, give me a marketing plan for dog food," for example, something like that, like it just doesn't have anything to go off of, and it's really just not like, in my mind, AI is actually not smart. I think the intelligence comes from the humanity. So to be able to put human on the front and human on the back, then and leaving that maybe 30 to 60% of sort of the grunt process work to AI, it's for us has just been such a beautiful workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're so right, having the that data ahead of time. We've been generating some interesting market research kind of stuff, and really getting the that data up front really turns in your results and makes your results so much more robust, and then can be even more creative, or at least it can be the kernel of creative that you can take as the human once you get the results out of it.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
completely agree.
Yeah, so tell us about Ammunition. What's Ammunition all about?
Yeah, so Ammunition is a wonderful agency. It's full service agency. We specialize in, obviously we have the video production arm, which we brought to the table almost 2 years ago, and we have a creative department, strategy, digital, media buying, all of the traditional sort of departments in an agency, and we're a younger agency, which is phenomenal. I never, being from the video production world, I've worked my entire life with ad agencies, my entire career, I should say. It's an interesting industry because, obviously agencies they're having to interact with all of the vendors and all of the clients. And I've worked with phenomenal agencies, and I've worked with agencies that have challenges. And Ammunition is one of these like really young, fresh agencies that is just willing to look at things differently all the time, which, I'm sure, as you can imagine, in the world of marketing and adding AI into it, adding influencers, etc., there's like anyone who's thinking traditional is probably not going to be progressing too much.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I think one of the things that I found too, especially creatives at agencies. I mean, we're kind of on the analytics side, so we're creative, but in a very different way. But when I meet with some of my friends on in different groups and other agencies, it's just amazing how important that whole picture is, and what you're talking about to really drive the results that a client needs in terms of really standing out as a brand and what have you. And one of the things that really comes up with that is how you tell a story. That emotional storytelling is so critical, and especially with video production. I mean, I look at, I can only really see, some of the commercials that are out. I hate to say it, I love watching commercials because I then, can see what's going on behind the scenes, so to speak, and really trying to understand what they're trying to say. And the
Yes.
storytelling, of some of these major brands like Progressive with Flow and with, that whole thing is just incredible. And so anyway, what are some of the key elements that really make video truly resonate, viewers on an emotional level when you're thinking about, generating a really good emotional story?
Yeah, that's a great question, Guy. I mean, I would say most importantly, that the biggest challenge I think I see with videos that I like and I don't like is whether or not they have the emotional component. And when people think of emotional storytelling, it's almost immediately you kind of go to, it's like, okay, if it's emotional, it's going to make you cry, or it's sappy or something like that. But when we work on a project, specifically as I direct as well, and am director, editor, and I run the entire team. But I always start, like, the first question is, what's the emotional reaction that you want to get from your audience, whoever that is, whether it's a captive audience and at a gala, or whether it's to 20 million people online, or whatever that might be. I think it's one of the reasons why comedy is such an effective tool, because comedy is like this ability to take, you can pretty much take anything, a Sonic burger, for example, or anything. The emotional storytelling can be through comedy and making people laugh. I mean, that is an emotion. And so it's also one of the most difficult genres to sort of tackle. But yeah, I think my answer to the question is the key element is to have an emotion in mind. And really, when you get into the editing process, always kind of give yourself these litmus tests of like, am I achieving this emotional resonance? And it's tricky with video because if you have someone watch it, come in, and I have, an account person come in and say, hey, just want your feedback. Does this hit home? At that point, I can never show them that video again, even with my edits, and
Hmm.
get any kind of objectivity. They've already seen it, and
Yeah.
now they watch it again, and maybe they see something differently, they experience it. So it's really kind of this interesting process when you're showing that it's, you have to really rely on your gut instincts. And Sacha Baron Cohen said something incredibly funny, are really real about comedy. On the other side is that if something's truly funny, it makes you laugh every single time. And that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
That is definitely amazing, and I think no, I don't know about you, but one of the best comedy movies that I like is Christmas Vacation, and I laugh at that every time. So I know exactly what you're talking about, and I even laugh at some of the commercials. And my wife goes crazy. She says, "Guy, what are you laughing at?" We'd be watching TV, and there'd be a really, really good thing, and I could laugh at some of those things every time. And so I could see where you're talking about. That could be incredibly difficult. So, do you have any good examples of where you're using, emotional storytelling in your video production to really reach a marketing objective?
Yeah, most definitely. So we just finished up a project actually with another agency. What's wonderful about today's environment is that agencies cross-pollinate. Our video team works on obviously ammunition clients and procuring and executing videos, but we'll also work with other agencies more from like the traditional Mad Hat pipeline, basically. And so we got to work on a really special project for the United States Marine Corps last year in November. And it was a recruitment video. Basically, they were like, "Hey, we want to make a video on making, the elite warrior, so to speak, and how can we make show off Marines as being these elite warriors?" And of course, I immediately go to like an emotional trajectory. And so, because military is not, there's a lot of emotion around military, right? It's like, oh, do you want to join the military? Well, I could go and get killed, right? There's kind of a fear there, and the Marines are definitely, without a doubt, one of the more intense programs, institutions in the United States military. You're going to get challenged when you go in there. So one of the questions when I go and interview, I think I interviewed about 7 or 8 different Marines in different places. And one of the questions that I almost kicked off every interview with is, tell me about fear, you know?
Hmm.
And so that's how we open the entire piece, just a single soundbite on fear. And we're showing people in very intense swimming training, where the Marine Corps has one of the most challenging swimming programs on the planet. You'll be in the pool for 8 hours, and they'll have you go down, and an instructor will swim down and hold you down underwater until you find pressure points on their body to be able to release. So you can learn how to, survive if someone were trying to hold you down underwater. And that stuff is no joke. I mean, that is, I don't care who you are, that's going to be something that's going to be incredibly an emotional experience with a lot of fear, especially if you haven't done it before. And then we get to go in and film that. So that's, if I were to say that, from where the video begins to where it ends, we're trying to, it's not all, the entire video is about fear, but that's how we sort of engage the audience,
Yeah.
especially if it's relatable, right? If I believe that this setup that we're filming there's fear around that, and this is a recruitment video, I want to address that emotional barrier, you know? So if someone's watching, like, oh, like if they're looking to maybe join the Air Force, the Army, or the Marines, someone could get scared by the Marines and seeing something a little bit more intense, or that could be their perception of it. So if you kind of address it head on, it's like, okay, well, maybe I can relate to that fear. And then throughout the video, that gets resolved through actual information storytelling along with emotional, then I think that's how you get movement. I think that's how you get traction with audiences.
Yeah, absolutely, Ed. Now, I've never worked with something like that, but we worked with a long time ago with Dove and Olay and in consumer packaged goods. And in essence, there is no difference between the chemicals in one product versus the chemicals in the other one. Okay, so there's maybe a little bit of a mix difference or whatever, or a feel difference, but in essence, the chemicals are the chemicals. What sells those brands, one versus the other, is the emotion. And that's the only real differentiator that you have. And if that's the case, then you being able to get that emotion across very quickly. And how do you, in your case, how do you get somebody that's maybe thinking about joining one of the armed forces, and then saying, well, I need to, I really want to think about the Marines for whatever reason. Getting that emotion across is so critical. So it's impressive how you're doing that and talking about it.
Thank you. Yeah, and just for your example with Dove, if I've imagined, like, I don't know, all the soap commercials that I've ever seen, that sometimes it's the opening up and you have this gorgeous bathroom that looks like a spa experience to very like ethereal and spa-like music. That's an emotion because people can relate to how they feel when they've been in that environment. And then it's like, okay, now I can associate this product with that emotion. And oftentimes I think people are sold. Advertising reflects this because we have things like 5-second ads, but I think people are making a decision either consciously or subconsciously very quickly on whether or not they like that. And in today's world with so many options, I personally, as a consumer, I actually just want almost someone to say like, hey, this is the only product you need for this. Like, this is the only brand you want to buy. Because as soon as you start getting online on Amazon, you're just bombarded with options.
Yeah.
There's just too many choices, and I really want that insight. And oftentimes if someone's giving me a recommendation, it's triggering some sort of emotional resonance for me.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the other hand, though, here we are now, almost, filled with AI, and AI technically doesn't have any emotion to it, and yet, it is an incredible tool. So how does it affect the creative process when you're generating and producing a video? And what kinds of tools and techniques have you found that have been most helpful?
So in a nutshell, I look at this from very much like a time and efficiency perspective, is that I have a line in the sand on how I'm going to use AI. And in 5 years, that might be an obsolete perspective. But the line in the sand that I have is that I'm selfish in the regard that I want to reserve the creativity to myself or to our team, or better put, to humans. And so the way I look at AI is that I want to be able to take the 20 hours it took me to do a process, where that includes maybe some grunt work and also some like really good creative work. And I want to minimize that grunt work and allow for the creative work to expand. So just a redistribution of time. And so now within that, I think depending on the creative, AI can be a wonderful bouncing board of creatives, for creatives, specifically people that like working in a team environment. Like right now, I've worked with cameramen, editors, visual effects people, composers. And I would say some composers, any of those roles, love to work individually. And then others like to work in a team, more collaborative environment. I would say that the people who like to work in a collaborative environment, in my limited experience, are going to be more likely to be successful with AI. Because it can be, you can literally simulate and say, hey, be my creative partner here and help me, develop ideas. And so I think it can enhance the creative process in that regard. But again, AI is in not creative. If I were to say, hey, here's a 10-minute transcription. Now I want starter ideas that could go for social media campaign, and give me 100 and be super brief, 7 or 8 words for each idea. It's going to spit those 100 ideas out right away. And 97, 98 of them are going to be absolute garbage. But it could stumble across a decent idea. And what I think this provides me a lot of confidence, I think, in humanity, that even with the ideas that it spits out, it still has no idea whether or not those 2 ideas are actually good or not. And that's where humanity comes in.
Yeah. So, but it sounds like AI can actually enhance the creative process. Do you see that as well? Clearly, as a human, I may have come up with those 2 or 3 ideas out of the 100 that you were just talking about. I may have come up with two or three that weren't a part of that 100, or I may have come up with a couple that just weren't that good. And then those two or three I don't know if you'd call them randomly generated, but those two or three that were good. So does it really help? Can it really help the creative process?
Yeah, I mean, it expands the creative process. So, like, for example, we did a video recently for the Atlanta Hawks, and we've done this video. This will be the third time that we've done this video. And when you go to the stadium at State Farm Arena and you sit down and you watch the opening video for some of the games, that's our opening video. It's what they call the City Edition. And we have one of the challenges with that project every year is it's time and money, which is probably the challenge on 95% of projects. And so the way it's been able to enhance the creative process is that AI is going to allow us to be able to do more within that budget, because we're saving time. We're saving time on the predictive side from time and efficiency, and then we're saving time by being able to actually use tools like Runway and Sora and Midjourney from image generation. So we're able to then basically, as we ideate our ideas versus 2-3 years ago, we could say, hey, wouldn't it be amazing if this guy was flying in the sky with a basketball, and which we can do all of that on our own through traditional VFX. But we could say, oh, no, that's going to be 30, 40 hours of time building that we're just not going to have in this budget. So now we can use Midjourney and Sora to help create that entire environment, because it's not that good. But what we can do is we can use it to create different elements and storyboard and really take a lot of them, make it a little bit more iterative, going back and forth. And then so we can do we did like basically a sequence of shots that would have taken us a couple weeks, and we were able to do it in about a week with the help of AI. In the end, it was still our traditional process. We're using After Effects and Photoshop and all of our traditional tools, but we're just able to do these little micro things that may have taken a long time significantly faster.
Wow. So that's that seems to be the case whether it's video or image or text generation, that you end up getting there faster and potentially more creative. So then to your point, you squeeze down the stuff that's kind of grunt work, and then you expand the time that you're spending on doing really creative stuff. And so I think overall the quality is going to go up, and that's I think that's critical if you want to, as a brand, if you want to be maintain your competitive advantage. Anything you can do to be that much more creative and that much more powerful is definitely a game changer.
I agree completely.
Yeah. So now, what about ethics? Have you thought about any ethics considerations or ethical considerations or anything as you're using AI to develop, video or, other things at Ammunition?
Yes, I mean we're always thinking about the ethics of it. I think as an organization, as a team, as individuals, I think we all have a different perspective on, like, a great wonderful example is that when I might want to use AI strictly for work, right, and processing, and someone else could say, well, I want to use AI to simulate a therapist for me, right? Which I think we've all kind of heard that. That's each individual's person kind of line in the sand on where they want to draw how to use AI. And even within the professional world, there's going to be a point where AI is going to be able to do things for us that we want to be doing. And I think that's going to be sticky. I'm sure it exists already for a lot of people, but I'm primarily using AI for all the things that I don't want to be doing, and then reserving myself to the things that I truly enjoy, like storytelling, brainstorming, in a lot of ways writing. I've never been a particularly good writer. I have writer's block getting that first page out. And so it's AI has allowed for me to do some writing, and based off of transcriptions and progressing. And I've trained models that work really well in my voice. So when I read it, I'm like, oh, that sounds like exactly what I said. It's just maybe a little bit carved out. But other people might, a writer would have the exact opposite perspective, right? They're like, that's my thing that I love doing. I don't want AI to write for me. So we could each have, individually our own sort of personal ethical concerns. But then in the larger perspective, and I think this is where your question was more, getting to, is that where humanity is going to have to make a decision. because AI is going to catch up. And a lot of the things that I pride, that the fact of what we can bring to the table, I think that's always going to be true, like the human aspect of it. We're at some point going to have to draw a line and, well, like, how do we do this without like completely eliminating ourselves out of the process? And fortunately, I do think that a lot of that is going to resolve itself. I don't know if I would say that I hope this, but what I see happening online is every day there's more AI generated content. And so when you look at these platforms like, Instagram and YouTube, these platforms gained so much popularity versus the traditional media for one reason. Like when they started off, it's authenticity. When you have influencers have done so well in the last decade because they've mastered the ability to get online and say, hey, you should go and buy this product. I've used it. I've tested it for you. And yes, I get a kickback. I'll even tell you it's even sponsored, but I'm really passionate about this project. I see what's happening now, and it's starting to, and I think it's only going to get worse, is that more people are going to start phoning in that content because AI is going to become very capable. And as soon as audiences, in my humble opinion, as soon as audiences start questioning on a regular basis whether or not this is a person talking to me or a computer or an AI model, I think it's going to turn people off. And I think that entire system, that ecosystem has the risk of really getting, crunched down and not being as interesting. I find that. I saw a video of a Rottweiler, a dog, and a lion, like smelling each other. And it was meant to be very handheld camera, like authentic sort of YouTube. And it was obviously AI. I could see that. And as soon as I keep seeing more and more of those, I'm just getting, that's just what, I want to put my phone down and not go in that world anymore.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That's a good point. But I always like to take the opposite of things like that because I could also see where if it human assisted, that is somebody that had the AI potentially do the evaluation or something like that, and then there was a human adding some creativity to it. It may actually be still of value. There may be some people that are very think it as being very valuable because it's not only it's kind of like 1+1 = 3. You're getting the AI piece of it, and then you're getting the human added on. Because I think you're right. If it's just AI just doing it, that's not going to work. But if it's AI and then with human assistant or human, supervision or whatever, then it can. I think it can actually add up to where 1+1 is 3 instead of 1+1 or 0+1 is 0.5 or something like that.
I don't disagree with you. I just think it depends on the use case. So for example, let's just say that you are a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and every quarter you sit down for a couple of hours and do like a video recording, a message out to everybody at the company. And with the invention or with the progression of AI, that CEOs are going to be able to basically, hey, like, here's the script for it we want to do. They're going to be able to automatically do that. And you're going to be able to sit there and watch a video from the CEO that looks almost identical. Like, if I would imagine that if people that work for the company knew that that's going to be an AI video, I think it takes something away.
Yeah, no, I see your point. And yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. So where do you see AI going? And, it's funny. I ask this question quite a bit and I say, well, where do you see AI in 3 years? And they go, well, I don't even know where it's going to be in 3 months. So I'll let you decide on the time frame, but where do you see it going? And then, of course, how do we really kind of stay ahead of the curve as AI advances and takes on more and more tasks?
Well, I mean, as Sam Altman says, we're sort of in this stage 3 right now of AI where we're getting into the agentic world, and where we're going to have agents to be able to do things for us. And I think there's going to be a big line in the sand with people wanting to gravitate towards that or be, repulsed by it. But I think when AI gets access to more information and more tools and has the ability to, say, book a flight for you, or book a vacation home, or, et cetera, et cetera, I think it's going to really open a whole different type of humanity. And that's going to, and I bring that as a large example, but you could apply that to marketing as well, obviously, and to basically any profession. I don't know where AI is going to be. Everyone keeps saying like in 6 months it's going to be crazy, and then 6 months later it's just, we don't quite have those ramps, but you see there are big indicators that it's coming more and more. So I really don't know, but I hope that it doesn't get completely out of control. I hope that there's some human intervention there, unless we're willing to, evolve into humans not working anymore and just getting a stipend. But I really don't know. And I kind of formed that decision when I was listening to a talk. I was attending a digital conference with NVIDIA's CTO, and NVIDIA has 95% of the world's AI is being done on NVIDIA, and they have access. They know exactly what's happening all across the AI spectrum. And he's sitting there saying, like, I can't even remotely keep my finger on it. I mean, it's far too much to be able to happen.
Yeah.
So right now, if I were to summarize that I would say where we see it going in video production eventually is that I'm going to be able to show up with this camera, you know what I mean, and go and record and do a shoot, and I'm going to be able to change the backgrounds. I'm going to be able to take this 4K camera that doesn't have a good lens on it, and I'm going to be able to modify that to an RE 35 millimeter master prime lens, and it's going to look phenomenal. And that's kind of where I hope it stops. I think if we get to a world where we no longer need cameras, I think that's going to be unfortunate, because then it's going to be a whole craft and a process that goes away. But on the flip side to it, that the more that, we're going to eventually be able to sit down with a client, and they're going to be able to say, hey, here's the project that we have. And we're going to be able to turn something around incredibly well thought out, incredibly good looking, and very finished in a shorter period of time, which that means that's going to allow for the marketing industry to be able to test it faster, get it out faster, get better real-time results. I see it for, like, take, for example, if you're, what kind of car do you drive, Guy?
I've got a Toyota RAV4.
Okay, RAV4. So I would imagine that in a decade, or maybe in 5 years, that when Toyota make that RAV4 commercial, or maybe even when they even just make any car commercial, what they're going to do is that when you see that commercial, you're going to be watching that RAV4 commercial, and the color that you already have are based on your experience and maybe you've bought all white cars. And so all the car commercials that you're going to see are basically going to be white. And as advertisers, we'll make one master commercial, and then AI will then disseminate, modify based on, you could manipulate it in any way that you want. Instead of, Caucasian family in the car, it's African American based on who it's going to. Maybe we're watching the spot, and maybe the spot was made for a national audience, and every time somebody watches it, the spot's in their neighborhood, driving on the streets that they recognize. And maybe we have 50,000 versions of the spots, all based on different names. Every Ryan or every guy in the world gets a customized spot for them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that technically is possible today, at least from a text perspective, and even to some extent with imagery. And then to your point, I think you're right. I think it will be possible to do 50,000 or 500,000 hyper personalized videos to be able to do that. That white RAV4 driving down the streets where I live, and with a Caucasian or an African American or whatever kind of family in there. That'd just be incredible. One thing though, and this is kind of maybe getting off, but how do you see, when you look at the future of AI and, potentially where it's going, you have knowledge workers that are kind of using AI to support, what they're doing in their jobs. And then you have kind of trades and skilled craftsmen and whatever that, are still working, with their hands and what have you. How do you see AI affecting either of those two groups of individuals?
That's a wonderful question. I'm going to ask for some more definitions. How would you define a knowledge worker?
Well, I would say marketing is mostly knowledge working. So you're not producing a thing at the end of the day. You're producing an idea. You might be then delivering it, certainly on print or whatever, but you're delivering really an idea. An accountant would be maybe a knowledge worker. A manager would be maybe a knowledge worker, as opposed to a tradesperson, which might be, let's say, a welder or a machine operator or something like that.
Or an electrician, for example.
Or an electrician, a plumber. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, I would say that there. It depends on, in the worst case scenario, I think we all fall victim to AI. One of the things I used to say is that the last job might be a garbage truck man, a garbage pickup delivery, but that can obviously go to AI. You know what I mean? With just robotic arms and a self-driving autonomous car. But I think I think workers are gonna get are probably going to have more resistance sooner than later. And then I would imagine that the actual trade skills eventually will, if it comes down to cost, like even take something like the delivery driver or the stocker in a grocery store. I think those, all of that. I mean, according to Elon Musk and all the Boston Robotics and everything, that the ability to be able to develop robotics in a simulation mode and to be able to train it in simulation without having to build it, we're going to see just so much progression out of that. I mean, what are we all going to have? A robot at home that's going to clean and do our laundry for us, and we're going to come home to everything be done? Am I going to be able to download schematics off of Etsy and go buy a bunch of 2x4s at Lowe's or Home Depot and then give it to my robot and come home to a children's playground? And some, according to some people, that like with the exponential scaling of AI and how and all of these things kind of converging, that can happen a lot sooner than later.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, where you could, because we're right in the middle of renovating our house, and we could then say to our robot, "Well, build in some cabinets over here, and build in some shelving units over there, and and order the stuff you need from Home Depot," and it'll get delivered, and pick it up and start cutting it. Here are the tools you need to be able to do that. Kind of a fascinating idea. So,
or even look at that at the evolution of businesses. I mean, look what's happened with grocery stores, right? It's the self checkout that's so much more readily available than the actual person. So you could be a carpentry company, and maybe they're going to just, instead of having workers, that they're going to invest in $40,000-$50,000 robots, and it's over time they're going to, as cabinet installers, they're going to see more profit.
Yeah, exactly. Jonathan, I'd love to keep going, but we've got to break off here. But I do have one question for you, and that is, what advice would you give an up and coming new marketer? How do you think they would or should enter the market of of AI and marketing?
Well, I would say that my advice to a new marketer is that, first off, you're already thinking differently than someone who's been in the industry for 20 plus years. And statistically speaking, you're going to be more likely to be able to not be threatened by AI and to be able to use it. And based on what they've grown up in, let's just say that they're, out of school, maybe 22, 23 years old, something like that they have a unique experience going for, if they've been using phones and social media, I mean, collectively, their use of AI, that they're going to be able to bring a perspective that older marketers don't have. And that's so valuable, considering that they're eventually going to be in the buying power. They're going to represent people with a lot of buying power. And my advice to them is that it's all about the idea, and recognize how valuable your perspective is. And so hold true your ideas and think about those, because AI is so far away from having good ideas, in my opinion. They're needles in a haystack. So it's like, you are the creator, you're the person that can have this idea, and AI can help you facilitate. But don't be intimidated by AI. At least not yet. The ideas are still, I think, going to remain with humanity for a while, and just really recognize your perspective, because your perspective is going to be different from mine, and I'm not going to be able to think like you. And eventually that's going to be a matter of relevance.
Yeah, how true, how true. That's a really good insight and perspective. So anyway, Jonathan, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So how can people reach out to you, and how can they reach your firm, and where can they find you?
Yes, our website is ammunition.agency, and we have all of our contact information on our website, and we've got, examples of our work. We've got a bunch of videos up on our website. We redid our website within the last, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 months, something like that. So it feels nice and fresh. And just that's our primary form of it. I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And for the audience, definitely stay tuned for many other videos in this series of the backstory on AI and marketing. And please visit marketingmachine.prorelevant.com and download some excerpts of my current books as well as my upcoming book on AI and marketing. Jonathan, thank you so much. It was really fantastic and really great ideas and thoughts there.
Thank you, Guy. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.